How do we keep students engaged? It's tricky because every student is different. Different backgrounds, different experiences, and different levels of motivation. Traditional teaching methods can leave them feeling confused, intimidated, left out, unheard, alone, discouraged. Top Hat's dynamic courseware helps you personalize your teaching to resonate with all students. In your lectures, in your assignments, and even in your textbooks. You can create learning moments that matter to your students. With 14 question types, you can drive real-time understanding, encourage active participation, and give every student a voice. The more your students engage with Top Hat, the more insights you get into their performance, giving you more opportunities to adapt your course as the semester unfolds. This helps students build confidence and drive better comprehension. How do we keep students engaged? The answer is right in front of you. Top Hat. Make every mind wonder.
Well, welcome back. And for those of you who are just joining us, we're glad to have you. So served up in weekly installments through to July 25th, Top Hat Summer Camp features acclaimed speakers and some exceptional faculty members who are with us to share their insights and practices to help you set the stage for a successful term. So the sun is shining, and if the UV index is high in your part, be sure to slap on some sunscreen and drink lots of water because our second summer camp session of the day is about to begin. Now, a couple quick housekeeping items. For those of you who are attending and for the folks who registered but were unable to make it, we will be making recordings of all of our presentations available to you after the fact, along with a bunch of really helpful resources on some of the content that we're going to be covering today. Attendees will also get a certificate of attendance they can use to put towards their faculty development hours. And last but certainly not least, we love engagement. So if you want to tell us where you're from, if you've got resources or ideas that you'd like to share, you can put those into the chat. And the Q&A feature we'll use to direct questions to our presenters. So this is all about teaching a great first day of class. That's what this session is all about. And your host today is Top Hat's Chief Academic Officer and part-time Director of Arts and Crafts here at Top Hat Summer Camp, Dr. Bradley Cohen. Brad, please take it away.
Well, thank you, Eric. If I'm the Director of Arts and Crafts, I think we're in a bit of trouble here, but welcome everyone. It's really good to see you popping in the chat there. I'm coming to you from Minnesota, where winter has finally given way to the rainiest spring in my memory. And today the sun has been out all day. There's no rain in the forecast. It has gotten a little gray just at the start of this. I'm hoping it will come through the window in a minute, but I hope you're having good weather and a good time wherever you are today. As Eric said, if you've joined us before, you know we really emphasize engagement here. So continue to use the chat, introduce yourself, maybe tell us a little bit about your summer refresh, how you've kept yourself busy, and if you have any ideas for my upcoming weekend getaway, I'd love to hear it. We will also be encouraging you to use this to share your ideas, your resources, your experiences as we go along. And just to emphasize Eric's point, if you do have a question for our speaker, please do use the Q&A here. Our focus today, as Eric said, is the first day of class. Teaching a great first day of class is a big deal. This is the time when our students are forming their first impressions of us, of their classmates, what our courses will be like, and what's expected of them. If we want to create community, if we want to instill the right habits, build excitement about what's to come, this is really where the rubber hits the road. It can be such a blur, and frankly, it can be overwhelming for students, but with the right approach, the first day can really set the tone for the entire semester. And as you're about to hear from today's featured speaker, whose wisdom I certainly wish I had in my early faculty days, engagement really is critical. And speaking of engagement, for those of you who are unfamiliar with Top Hat, we are the leading provider of student engagement solutions in higher education. Through automated attendance, interactive polls, quizzes, discussions, and a growing catalog of interactive texts, the Top Hat platform enables instructors to embrace evidence-based practices inside and outside the classroom. We also give faculty the tools to create their own interactive course materials or customize texts from our growing catalog of national titles. This helps reduce cost to students and increases the impact of their content. This past year, we launched ACE. Those of you who attended the earlier session heard all about it. This is our AI-powered teaching and learning assistant to make it easier for you to integrate frequent low-stakes assessments into your course materials. With a click of a button, ACE generates a question with supporting hints and explanations, all based on the context of your course content. Students can also use ACE for personalized study support, whether they're clarifying challenging concepts, creating study guides, or generating practice questions to help them prepare for high-stakes assessments. So there are lots of great features here to help you build community and engage your students in learning from day one and beyond. We'll be launching a Zoom poll toward the end of our session if you're interested in learning more about Top Hat. And with that, it's time to introduce our speaker. I am absolutely thrilled to introduce Dr. James Lang. A longtime educator, Dr. Lang is the recipient of the 2016 Fulbright Specialist Grant and the 2019 Paul Ziegler Presidential Award for Excellence in Scholarship at Assumption University. He is currently serving as professor of practice at the Koenig Center for Teaching Excellence at the University of Notre Dame. He is the author of 6 books, the most recent, Distracted: Why Students Can't Focus and What You Can Do About It. And he's a regular contributor to the Chronicle of Higher Education, including his widely read piece and the basis for our talk today, How to Teach a Good First Day of Class. Dr. Lang, it's wonderful to have you with us.
Thank you, Brad. I'm looking forward to our conversations today, and you're going to turn share screen access over to me.
That's right. I'll turn it over to you. I know you've got some principles to share to get us started, so looking forward to it.
I do. All right. All right, great. So welcome, everyone. I'm looking forward to our conversation today. As Brad and Eric mentioned, I wrote a piece for the Chronicle of Higher Education a few years ago, which was about the first day of the semester, giving some principles and some models could guide us through that important day of the semester. It's a few years old now, and but I'm teaching a class this summer, a 5-week intensive course, which means 2 hours a day, co-teaching it. And so it's the 4th week, which means 3 weeks ago, I was thinking very hard about the first day of the semester, and it kind of forced me to go back to my own principles and think through this issue again. And so what you're going to see today is, the core principles are still there with some updated examples and some ideas about how do we start off this semester in the best possible way. And really the goal here is to make sure that what we do on that first day sets the stage for the kind of learning that will continue throughout the semester. And I'm really going to focus on the idea of engagement and community building. And I think those two things, those have to start on day one. We can think about the first day of the semester as a place to sort of share the syllabus and discuss about course expectations. And those things are important. We do need to do those things. But I think the more important thing that has to happen on that first day is this full engagement by students and that sense of how we start together as a learning community focused on one shared goal to promote a great learning experience for everyone in the course. So we'll start a little bit with just a little, a couple of fun slides here. My favorite, which comes from the Greek philosopher Aristotle. Going back to some way ancient wisdom here. And Aristotle makes this point in his famous Ethics. Beginning seems to be more than half of the whole. And many things that follow the beginning are actually become illuminated as we go through the experience that goes afterwards. So kind of highlighting this notion here that, we think about, well, the beginning is just like, well, one, of a semester, it's maybe one of 30 classes. But that one class can have ripple effects throughout the entire semester. So that really stuck in my mind. The beginning seems to be more than half of the whole. With that notion in mind, it's kind of disheartening sometimes to see how faculty members use that precious first day in terms of modeling what will happen throughout the semester. This next slide is a very unscientific poll with one person, my daughter, who just graduated from college. Her boyfriend is an engineer. He also just graduated, going on to get his PhD, had multiple engineering classes throughout his time as an undergraduate. And I asked him one day, what do your professors do on the first day, like in your engineering courses? And it was not just for engineering, it was for all his courses. I just said, give me like a general sense of what your first days are like. And I was actually kind of asking, for example, in engineering class, they asked you to like solve a problem on the first day. And here's how that conversation went. What do your engineering professor do on the first day of class? Whip out the PowerPoint and review the syllabus, right? Never ask you to solve a problem? That would be great. But no, that never happens, right? So I won't say the name of the institution because I think this is probably pretty endemic to what we do on the first days. And I remember as a new teacher and as a student, I just love the idea you could, walk in, present the syllabus, and then end in, after 20 minutes after the first day, right? I think that was a kind of unspoken way to start the semester for a long time. I think we realize now, again, going back to Aristotle here, it's so important that first day model and it'll have effects throughout multiple days throughout the semester. So let's talk a little bit about what we should be doing instead. First of all, we're in a context right now. We're all very aware of this, sometimes been called the crisis of student disengagement. And there's lots of reasons for that. I don't need to go through all these things. There's multiple sources. Some are within the student, sometimes they're within sort of social, global things that are happening, and sometimes they're with us, right? So sometimes disengagement sometimes comes from the fact that we're tired, and that maybe we feel frustrated at the way things are going in our courses or in higher education more generally. So all of these things play a role in student disengagement. So we're not here to talk about the sort of causes of that. Our goal is to think about, okay, what do we do about this? How do we start building back up that engagement again? And for me, the first day is an essential moment to start that process. So we're coming from that, that's the context. So we're talking about this session, 4 principles. The first thing is to model engagement. So whatever you expect your students to do throughout the semester in the classroom or the learning experience, wherever that might be happening, that has to start on the first day. Building community, making sure that everyone feels supported and belongs in the classroom, and also building up some stuff that can help them alleviate or relieve stress as it builds out over the course of the semester. I do think it's important to do something with the course content on the first day. And one way that we can do that is sort of raise the deep questions of the course. And finally, discussing expectations. And I use discussion there because I'm going to argue this should not just be like a one-way conversation, which I'm just saying, here's how the course works. Follow these rules, and we'll get to the end of the semester together, right? So it should be partially a discussion. I'm going to lead the discussion because I created the course, but I want students to have a voice in discussing the expectations of the course. Okay, those are our 4 principles. I'll go through the 4 principles with just a slide or 2 for each of them. I'll have a little stop for Q&A, and then I'm going to give you like 5 examples of what actual opening days might look like, actually that do look like, in a handful of instructors that I think model different principles here. And really, I know it sounds like, I'm kind of loading a lot of stuff on the first day, but many of these principles can be built into a single activity if it's well thought of. And also, we're going to think at the very end about the possibility that, your first day is important. The whole first week is important, right? So you don't want to have something you do on the first day and then everything just changes after that, right? You have some great thing you do on the first day, and then you move right into your lecture mode for the rest of the semester, right? So we want to think about how we continue to do these important principles throughout the semester. Okay, so let's get started here. I am going to start with a little theory from a sociologist named Jay Howard. And his research focuses on the social environment of the classroom. As a sociologist, Howard explains, in any social space which humans are interacting, there are norms that govern our behavior. You love to use the example of an elevator, right? You walk into an elevator, you know how to behave in that space. If there's other people in there, you don't face the back wall, you turn around, face the doors, and you might be polite, but you're not going to engage deep conversation with people in elevators, right? For that 15 seconds you're there together. But those are social conventions that we sort of very aware of. No one tells you that. You sort of figure it out. If you're in an elevator with a little kid sometimes who don't know the norms, right? And so they're looking around, they talk to people, right? So likewise, they're unspoken norms, but they're very powerful. And he explains the college classroom is full of these norms that guide our behavior. And the first day is the place to start acknowledging and reshaping those norms, especially around engagement. So he gives an example. We all know this norm we've experienced as teachers and learners. When a teacher throws out a question in a general way, there's some number of students who are going to look like this student, right? Oh, right, I got the answer, right? I have something to say, right? And often it's like 2 or 3 students in a room of 30 students. There's always going to be 2 or 3 students like that. And Howard argues in sociology, this is called the consolidation of responsibility. And so as a result of those 3 students, everyone else knows I don't have to participate because those students will carry the burden of participation in this course. So as a result, that's a norm that your students have absorbed from, years and years of education. They know they look around, they can look around and see, okay, yeah, that kid's going to speak throughout the entire semester, right? So that norm has to be reshaped from the beginning. So we just go into the first day and say, okay, who's got some thoughts about a question or a problem? Who solved the problem first? Whatever it might be. We have to sort of democratize the engagement on the first day of the semester. Now, this doesn't require some kind of innovative strategy. There's easy ways to do that but your goal is to sort of reshape that norm in the first day. What I call opening statements. In a seminar course of 20 students, everyone has to say something on the first day in relation to the course content, for example, or throw out a thought question about the course content. There's no right answer to it, but just everyone shares their perspective. And even you can have them to write their idea down before they have to speak it out loud, which lowers some of that anxiety they might have about that. But opening statements means everyone's voice gets heard on the first day, right? We can always do this with technology as well. Writing before speaking is a way to kind of encourage more people to participate on the first day of the semester, right? If you ask them to do an activity, let them do some writing, typing, writing, whatever it might be, to ensure that they have something concrete they can work from when they have to finally or voice something. And if it's a larger class, we can do what I call invitational participation, which means maybe everyone is not going to raise their hand or speak out loud. But I'll talk a little bit about this in a few minutes, but the idea of inviting students to participate and not just relying on the 3 loudest voices in the classroom, but inviting everyone else. Invitations that can be declined, but still, do you have something to say? You want to have anything to contribute right here, right? And so being very deliberate about reaching out as many voices as possible, even in a larger class. And of course, I didn't put this on here, but think, pair, share. Even if students are just talking to each other in a pair, that still is modeling a different kind of engagement than just 27 people sitting there and 3 people just saying things over and over again. Okay, so that's the first thing here. Engagement has to start on the first day. And if you want it to be democratized, then democratize it on the first day. Second, community building. Community building obviously is important. There's lots of reasons for that, right? We know that students need for purposes of belonging, inclusion, forming relationships on campus, mattering. There's a lot of actually different theories behind why community is important, but they all converge on the same idea. Students need to feel being part of a learning community, feel welcome, supported, their voices matter. All these things are essential, right? Now, this book is a really interesting take on this idea of how relationships really fuel college success, both in the classroom and then beyond the classroom, and then in their careers beyond that. So, for example, the role of mentors, the role that mentors play in student success. And they argue that the classroom is the place where we can start those relationships that will support students and create better retention, even better learning performance, and that sense of feeling welcomed and belonging on campus. Now, I love the phrase they use. That's why I'm showing you this book and citing these folks. The relentless welcome. They argue that institutions and courses need to have a relentless welcome. It's not just the first day. It starts on the first day. We have to be very constantly welcoming students into the learning experience. And that kind of goes back to the engagement piece, right? So I'm not just, having a modeling one thing on the first day, but then people can sit back and not feel welcome in future days. It's relentless. And that community building likewise has to be relentless work, which means in the classroom, I want students to be doing, pair share. I want to have small group work. I want to have them in breakout rounds if it's a virtual course. I want to have that community building, and me being deliberate about putting those experiences in the learning as much as possible, reaching out, helping people know each other names, learning names of each other, right? Every time I put students in a group, make sure you know who your partners are. Introduce yourselves, talk to who you all are, your majors, all that kind of stuff, right? So I can be deliberate about that, but that community building should start on the first day, again, and then be relentless beyond that. Now, there's multiple theories that help support that idea in general, but I would actually push a new idea here. When I don't see that quite much in the community. It's not a new idea. It's coming from Kelly McGonigal, a psychologist who has delivered a famous TED Talk. One of these TED Talks that's had like 1 million views. What the whole stress, the relationship between stress and health. And McGonigal points out that there's the way we think about stress makes a difference in terms of how the impact it has on our health. But she also points out something else really interesting. The idea that stress, one of the ways that we can handle stress is building out our social connections. She actually points to the idea of oxytocin as like a stress hormone that nudges us toward social connections. So when we're feeling stressed, that hormone kind of pushes us to reach out to people. But if we don't know those people, we can't do that. And so the classroom community is a place to sort of form those relationships, will be there for us when we need them. And it's the 10th week of the semester, and the work has piled up as a student, and the final project is coming up, or like it's the 5th week of the semester. I'm feeling lonely on campus, and I haven't met anybody yet. I don't feel like I have enough friends here. Well, the classroom is the first place we can sort of help build up that community that will create that the resilience and the the commitment to their education. So I would argue that both those things together are arguing that we should be really prioritizing community in the classroom starting on the first day. Okay, that's community is number 2. Number 3, questions. So this idea comes a book that came out actually I think in 2004, What the Best College Teachers Do by Ken Bain. And Ken Bain argues that many college courses are designed to sort of present information or ideas, right? Learn this, here's a body of research you should learn, body of ideas, a body of text, whatever it might be. And that's the sort of course content as we conceive of it. But he argues, it's really important for teachers to think about the fact that most of those bodies of research, text, whatever it might be, were put together to answer a deep fundamental question about the human condition or the universe or the natural world, right? And there's these deep fundamental questions behind the things that we are trying to teach students. And so the content is an answer, but the question we often leave out. And the first day is a good day to sort of start the process of raising the questions that will drive the learning in the course. So it's worthwhile for you to think about, before going into that first day, what is the deep question that drove the development of your discipline? What questions drove the creation of your course? And then you can personalize it a little bit. I remember a neuroscientist. I took many, she worked with Ken Bain on a series of workshops for many years, and I would sometimes attend those workshops. Her name was Jeanette Norden, and she was a neuroscientist at Vanderbilt University School of Medicine. And I remember her saying about the fact that on for 5 minutes, the first day of the class, right before in her office, she would sit and she would try to remember when she first learned about the brain and how fascinated she was by all the amazing things that it could do, and the question that it raised for her: how do brains do that? Like, how do people get these things done with their brains? Like, what's the connection between that physical organ and all the things that we do as humans, right? And so she had to tap back into that to get herself in the mode to really then share those questions with her students, drive them into learning. And finally, we might think about the question that your course will help students solve, right? And again, we don't often think about that, but like somebody will say, okay, by the end of the semester, they're gonna be able to solve these questions. Raise those questions on the first day so they can see, oh yeah, this course is gonna help me get the answer to that kind of thing. And I'll give you an example of that from a physics professor who on the first day of the semester put students into small groups and then asked them questions like this, right? What's the number of people per square meter in 48 states, and how many piano tuners are there in Chicago, right? So these kinds of questions, and he argues, this is a start of a process for them to use numbers, reasoning, and logic to help them answer questions. Now they're going to get more tools over the course of the semester, and the formula, the theories that will help them answer these kinds of questions. But his day on the first day, he wants them to be curious. How would I solve that question, right? And there's like 3 of us here, we don't have our resources right now, our digital resources. How could we use our brains right now to solve that question? These kinds of strange questions, right? So the goal here is not so much to worry about the specific question, but get that process going on the first day. This course will help you answer important questions. It'll help you solve interesting problems. And so whatever you're doing at the beginning, sometimes at the end of the semester, you can sometimes bring that back on the first day and make it like an intriguing way to start the semester. Okay, finally, of course, expectations. Again, this is the model of, the sort of walk in and read the syllabus and describe everything that's going to happen in the course. And I think it's important for students to have that, you sharing not only the syllabus itself, reviewing some of the key ideas there, pointing it to the students, things that are most essential in the course. But I would argue there's some different ways we can do this. In a mindset shift here, it's not just it shouldn't be just a lecture, right? When students can still engage with the syllabus in a more active learning experience, and I'll provide a model of that shortly. But like, how can you build some active learning around the syllabus? Many years ago, I spoke with an engineer actually, who had on the first day of the semester as a syllabus quiz. Students get the syllabus, they have to read it and review together in small groups, and they take a group quiz on the syllabus. So they make sure they understand everything, and then he goes through the quiz and sort of answers questions, and so that's not like for credit, but it's like a little quiz so they engage with the syllabus. I think it's important also in terms of what you want to emphasize in that syllabus is the resources. So on the first day, it can be intimidating, right? I hear all about my assignments I have to do. I hear all the homework I hear about, right? As a student, I'm hearing all this stuff, and there's this big learning journey ahead of me. Well, it's probably most important for us to say, and yet you're going to have all of these things that are going to help you. Me, the resources, a platform like Top Hat and the resources that it provides. If we have a tutor center on campus, all of these things, we need to be make sure there are those that are available. And finally, I think it's really important too, especially around policies, like for example with AI, policies about use of technologies in the classroom, policies about discussion protocols. All those things are really important. They can just show up on the syllabus as, here's how we do it here, or here's my policies on these things. I think it's really important for students to see why. Why are we doing certain things like in this class to sort of pull the veil back on the things that we're doing as teachers and create more transparency in terms of our policies and expectations. I'll give you one example of that from my own syllabus. I mentioned the idea of invitational participation. Some people call that, cold calling, or calling on students when they haven't volunteered. And I don't like those ways to describe it. I like the idea of invitational participation, which is sometimes I will invite you to participate. You can say no, but I want to make sure that everyone feels welcome and invited to participate on a regular basis. And sometimes I'm going to, as a teacher, do that with you. But I want them to understand. So I'm going to show you the policy that I give to my students with the sort of reasoning part here in bold. And I expand on this in the course, the first day, right? So I explain, I run a student-centered class. Mostly we'll be doing stuff. And I expect everyone to participate in these activities. And here's why. Because your unique perspective and ideas are valuable and might bring to the conversation that nobody else has considered, including me. So if I don't hear your voice, if I can't hear your ideas or observe them, or how are we going to share them with me? The conversation is just like lost some of its richness because you're not there. And so I want to make sure that I am inviting you on a regular basis to be part of this conversation, right? So again, I explained this a little bit more in detail in class, but the reasoning is there. And so I think it's really important for all of our policies to make sure, like, what's the deep learning purpose of our policies, in addition to just saying what they are. Okay, I'm going to stop there, Brad. I didn't see we have any questions or comments from folks.
We do, Jim. So I'm going to try to put a couple of things here together. Rachel kicked off in the chat an observation about our students and our faculty today in the wake of the epidemic and just the difficulties confronting everyone who's in higher ed today. And there's a question coming through the Q&A that connects to that, which is really about sensitivity to individual student and faculty dispositions. And I think your invitational participation model is a helpful step in the direction of being sensitive in that way. But could you talk a little bit more broadly or generally about how can you guide us through making decisions about our own practice when we're confronting extreme shyness or just the kind of difficulties in our communities that we're seeing today? How do we really ground our practice in humanity that we need to call forward today?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I did not love to participate in class when I was a student. Definitely, I count myself on the introvert end of the scale. And although I did learn to participate over the course of my time as I grew a little confident in my, my academic abilities. But I think it's really important, even those students who might have that kind of, that sense of introversion or shyness, or even, even more extreme versions of, feeling like really anxious or panic to have to participate in class. We can use other strategies to give them an opportunities to think on paper, and just even like, so I usually typically, for myself, I do three things. For most of the times, before I do any kind of invitational participation, they can write something down, and they can then just read out loud what they wrote. So that's the first. It kind of gives them like a platform to stand on, so they just have to sort of improvise while they're speaking. Secondly, it depends on the kind of question you're using, right? So if I'm asking you, like, if I put a problem on the board and then I say, did you solve it? Well, you're really putting that student on the spot, because they may or may not, and that might also give a sense of like shame or failure if they don't have the right answer. If I ask a question like, have you experienced this before? Or, what's your, can you give me an example of this that you've seen in real life, right? And again, so I can use questions that sort of lead me into the more difficult questions to ensure that everyone has an opportunity to participate. I also will do sometimes with students who I know are having trouble participating for various reasons. I will let them know before class. We're gonna have a discussion today. I'll call on you first. You can prepare your answer, and then you can relax and have an opportunity to kind of think and process as other students are participating. So I sometimes will work out with them in advance. This is when students have accommodations, or we sort of talk together about how to encourage their participation in class, where I can really see they're struggling. So I can reach out to those students individually. And then I guess the last thing I want to say about this is, and this is a real thing, they can always decline. They can always just say, no, I don't have anything to say right now. Or they can just say no. And that's fine with me. And if they do that all the time, then I might reach out to them and say, can I help? What else can we do to ensure that you can participate? But the first day, again, I want to make sure that, I could do it with one word. I could ask students to say one word in response to a question, right? That's enough to just get people over that barrier of just that first sense that I'm part of this community. Okay, that's probably a long answer. Sorry.
No, that's great. That's great. Maybe one more and then we'll go on. So there have been a couple of questions that have come through about the challenge of scale. So how do I think about these kinds of techniques and the desire on the first day to build community and engagement when I have a very large class? I might have a large class that has very strong feelings about the mandatory nature of this class. So how do I break through in that first day with a very large group?
I'm going to show you one of the examples. The second example we're about to see right now from Derek Bruff I think is the way to think about a great model of what you could do on the first day. I'm guessing you didn't say your discipline, but if it's a large, it might be a STEM course.
It's an engineering course.
Yeah, okay. So I'll give you an example from a math course. And I think it'll give you maybe a better sense of how that could be answered. But I will say, again, you can't have everyone speak in a class of 200 students on the first day into the room. They can talk to each other. They can also talk through technology, right? And so those are both opportunities that you have to build that sense of community beyond just people speaking into the room. And I think that's, again, every talk I give at some point I say, the most important thing is variety, right? Giving various experience entry points to the learning, various ways to process the material, and various things that we're doing in the classroom, right? So like, having whole group conversations is great. Small group conversations are great. Paired conversations are great. Conversations online are great. Like our goal should be always to expand those opportunities to give multiple entry points for all students.
Okay, great. Well, let's go on. And we've got some more questions already in the queue. So keep them coming.
Let's crack on. All right, so I'm going to give you 5 examples of I think ways we can put some of these principles into action, and all of them actually are not. These are like 5 examples to illustrate the 4 principles, each one by each. These are things that can pull these ideas together into like a single class period. Now, probably don't grab all 4 of them, but like what would it look like to start thinking broadly about an activity that's good for learning or student support, but also community building and getting students to talk and engage, all that kind of stuff. So let's just quickly go through 5. I have a couple of little final thoughts, then we'll have a more discussion. This first one comes from Kate Denial, historian. She actually a book that just came out this week called The Pedagogy of Kindness. And Kate has written about her work as a historian on the first day of the semester. And I just love what she does on this day. Does like an intro to history course. And students in the first day, she puts them in small groups. She gives them a document packet, which contains like different documents, all documenting the same source, not the same event. It's not an event they're going to cover in the class. They all sort of all engaging with the same event. Maybe it's probably one that they don't really know that much about. She tries to choose an event that's not a really popular one or a common one. The students have to work together to sort of develop like a story, what happened in that event. They share the stories with each other. And of course, because every group has a different document packet, the stories are all slightly different. And as a result, Kate Denial is getting there to a deep question or a deep issue in history, how it's not just a sort of like, set of events that are written in stone, right? It depends on how you share the story, how you kind of draw from what documents we have available to us. We tell the story differently. And so I just love this way to kind of, you can see multiple things going on here. Of course, the community building and the small groups. There is a deep question that's being addressed here about what history actually is, right? And the engagement. So you have the community, the engagement, you have the deep question here, right? So all these things are happening on this first day. Now, she folds around that first day also, the sort of course expectation stuff too, and the larger plan that she talks about. But this to me is a great way to think about how to engage students in a deep question or problem in community in an engaging way. Next one is Derek Bruff in math. So this is a great example of using technology. And Derek Bruff has written books about 2 books about technology. The first one was just about electronic polling, then more generally called intentional tech. And Derek argues, this math class he writes about, he uses a question. So students come in, they're given a question about spotted owl populations and how their populations are declining, and then or how they're changing. And then he asks them to sort of solve a problem in the long run. How does their population increase, decrease, or level off given things that are happening in the environment right now? Likewise, the students get in small groups, but they respond through polls, right? So they can use polling to register their responses. And then Derek kind of looks what they did. Then he walks through the response. And so he says, okay, here's what you might have noticed or not noticed, and here's the way an expert would have solved this problem. Then he gives him a second problem, and that's a more difficult problem. His goal, the first problem they should be able to solve with a little bit more help from Derek. The second one is more challenging, and he expects them not to be able to solve that. And at the end of the process, he says, okay, listen, what you did today, this course is going to help you solve these problems or questions. You'll be able to use math to make these kinds of predictions, to understand, deep problems that are happening in the world. Okay, so I love this idea too. Start with a really cool stool problem, like a unusual or unique, or just like a fundamental problem that students could try to solve. This reminds you also of the Fermi problem as well, right? So the physics one, we see both STEM examples here. So give them a problem. Take the problem for the last day and bring it back in the first day, see what they do. And then say, okay, now here's what by the end of the semester, you will be able to solve this problem. And come back to it on the last day, actually. Okay, so Derek Buff, math. Next, let's look at, I'll give an example from my own classes. I teach a course called 20th Century British Literature and Culture. I haven't, for a few years, I haven't taught it, but Assumption University I did for many years. And this is what we do on the first day, because students come into the idea of like, what does British exactly mean? Like, what is Britishness actually? And so, what does that mean? Typically they'll say, they sort of equate British with Englishness. And so, where does Scotland fall there, right? Or what is it between British and UK? And so I kind of just want to hear what do they think? Like, what do they know about these things, right? What are your impressions of British culture? They like to talk about the Queen and tea and the countryside and Britpop and right. So I want to hear those impressions though, because I want to just know you're coming into class which is going to focus on 21st century British literature and culture. But tell me where you are already, right? And then tell me also, do you know any British writers that have published since 2000? Of course, they're going to tell me J.K. Rowling. They're going to tell me, maybe Bridget Jones' Diary, that kind of thing. So they'll know some things, but that's really helpful for me to see where they are before we start jumping in with the things I'm going to present to them. And so prior knowledge, of course, we know is really important for learning. Surfacing and acknowledging prior knowledge. This is again like a very well established principle and important principle in learning. So that's what I'm trying to do in this first day is get their prior knowledge out on the board. And as you see the third time now here, small group brainstorm. I get their ideas just on the board, and then I try to look for patterns in them, and then just say, okay, now here's where you're going to go now in the rest of this semester. Okay, but always you can use prior knowledge. Prior knowledge is again, that's like a low stakes. There's nothing to be wrong about by asking students what their prior knowledge is. And it can be even just very surface and level, but that's fine. You're just getting them to talk surface before we'll go on. Okay, next one. I'm not much of an icebreaker person myself. I don't like icebreakers where I have to kind of, share my favorite ice cream, all that kind of stuff. I see the value in those things, and I understand that can help people connect with each other. I just don't like them myself, so I don't use them for myself in my own classroom. So I don't like to say things that present an idea that I wouldn't use myself. But this one comes from Robert Talbert, who's he's co-written a book called Grading for Growth, and he's also been doing a lot of thinking about teaching and learning higher education in recent years. And he presents this idea in his Substack post, this icebreaker, which is focused on the learning in the course. And the first day of the semester, he asked them to, again, pull in with responses to these questions. What's something you're good at doing? Don't worry about school, anything you're good at, sport, hobby, whatever it might be. And then the second question is, how did you get good at the thing you were good at doing? And so you see the word cloud there that was generated from one of his times he did this. The one in the middle, like concitus or whatever it be, he speculates that that's supposed to be consistency. So yeah, but you can see this was actually like a student version, right? Where they're just sort of typing into their phones the responses to the poll questions. Now, of course, this is an engagement activity. No one had to speak out loud. It was done through polling, but people could engage that way, and he'll be doing more of that kind of that form of engagement throughout the semester. And then he uses that to say, okay, these things you're a good learner. You've learned to do these things, right? So you'll be able to use these skills, your ideas here, to go forward with your learning in this course. And even he can then share some resources and support on that first day. So again, another first day activity. Last one, to relate to the idea of expectations, and I mentioned the idea that it should be a conversation. So Remy Callier talks about this idea of an annotated syllabus. This next slide has got a lot of text on it, so I'm going to quickly introduce it before I show it to you. The key point the key points are in bold. The annotated syllabus is again something that starts at the beginning of the semester, but for Callier, it continues. But the notion is the syllabus is a living document. I've created it, but I want to hear your thoughts on it, your comments, your questions, even your pushbacks on it once you've seen it. So the first day of the semester is an opportunity to show students the syllabus and then have them engage with it in some way. I talked about the syllabus quiz. This is a slightly different way to do that. This is Callier's how he explained it to his students. The syllabus is the start of a conversation in class that first day. The students have the opportunity then to get together, raise questions, put comments. He can then not only respond to those on that first day, but continue to respond to those. And the way he uses it is he keeps it alive throughout the entire semester. So if students have questions about the syllabus, other students might be able to jump in there and respond to those comments. So it's like a living document that extends throughout the entire semester. On my first day of the semester with my co-teacher and I, 3.5 weeks ago, we did a different version of this. We gave the students a syllabus and we actually gave them access to it online. But then we put them in small groups and said, you need to give us 3 questions about the syllabus. And we're going to then answer those for you. And it was quite interesting to see. Of course, they asked questions about the assignments, how they're going to do certain things in terms of or the policies about technology, all that kind of stuff. And they were good questions. I mean, probably eventually, if you do the same syllabus over and over again, you might stop hearing new questions, but we were not in that case, right? So we felt like we designed the syllabus in a very transparent and clear way, and we still got good questions about it that helped us think a little further about what we're going to do next in the class. So I just love the idea of this, sort of having that syllabus as a draft or a draft that can be shaped depending upon your students' responses to it. And again, it can be done online, individually, as a group. But again, it's a way of modeling that engagement on the first day. When you come into this room, we do stuff in here, right? You're not going to just sit there and listen to me throughout the entire semester. We do stuff in here. Okay, so here's just some ways to think about. Okay, so I know there's a lot of text here. You don't need to worry about so much the whole thing. I think you'll get access to the recording later, so you can look at it again. But like this, it could look like any of these things, right? But I still want to acknowledge the fact that, we should walk in and say hi and everything, like the one on the left there. But then this is actually the question that we did our first day of the semester 3.5 weeks ago. This is exactly what we did. Actually, the welcome took like 30 seconds. We said, hi, I'm Professor Lang, this is Professor Redenga. You're in the right course. Okay, we have a question for you. And the students then wrote for 5 minutes in response to that. The course is about the art and science of learning. So it's sort of coupling our perspectives of neuroscientists and an English professor together. And so we took narratives and what goes on in the brain, et cetera, et cetera. Anyways, so this was our first activity. And then we discussed it. And it was the smallest class, so they were able to sort of share their answers, but then also introduce themselves, a little bit of basic introductory stuff. Then we did the annotated activity, and then we got them ready for the next class. So, so that question is related to the course, because it's a course about learning. But at the same time, it was, just an easy activity to kind of jump into the engagement, which included writing, speaking to the group, and speaking to their peers. Okay, and again, maybe you say it's like a larger course, it's a lecture course, and you might think a different kind of model over there, right? So, 10 minutes, I present the question to you, and I give you context for it, the problem, whatever it might be. Students get together, try to pool their knowledge and solve the problem. Then, like Derek Bruff does, okay, we're gonna work through it together. Then that's like our first, 40 minutes or so. Then we do the course expectation stuff. Maybe you give a lecture to kind of jump into the semester because it's like maybe it's a Tuesday, Thursday class. And finally, another writing activity again, done on the LMS. So you can look at those afterwards and see, okay, what are my students excited about that you can emphasize that on the next day. Okay, so lots of possibilities here. like to think about that first day. Actually, I am a big believer of sort of taking a sort of modular approach to teaching, right? I have like 4 modules I'm gonna do every day, or 3 modules, whatever it might be. There's a lecture, there's a small discussion, there's a group work, right? It's like, how do I put those things together? These are ideas of how we kind of sort of modular approaches that first day of the semester, hitting the principles, and ensuring that students are fully engaged in different ways on the first day. Finally, last slide for me. The first day is important. The whole first week is important, and especially because you don't want to have this amazing first day, a lot of engagement, and then just jump right into your lectures, or whatever you're gonna do. That maybe not be like the first day. So the second day should repeat or vary or expand the engagement activities. So there's something different or something that's repeated, so that they have the sense that, okay, if normally you do this one thing as engagement, well, it should be done again on the second day. I do think, again, I talked about the relentless community building, and for the second day is another opportunity then to kind of be able to, introduce that relentless thing that it's going to happen. This is going to happen over and over again. So get to know each other, because you're going to get to, you're going to be working with each other all the time. And this last thing is to me the most important thing. I want to convey that every voice matters in this room. So I'm just constantly going to be trying to invite your voice into the room. And voice there is sort of, standing for all kinds of ways you can engage through writing or technology, all that kind of stuff. But I want you to be in this room, and so we can all hear good ideas and share them with each other. And that has to start on the first day. Okay. Yeah, I think that's it, Brad.
All right. Well, Jim, fantastic. The engagement level, as we anticipated, is very, very high. We're not going to be able to get to all of these questions, but we do have time for a couple of more questions. You will see a Zoom poll pop up. If you're interested in learning more about Top Hat, please complete the poll and we'll follow up. The first question I want to ask is that's coming up from a number of directions is really about online versions of this. So do you have any thoughts about how you kind of translate this into either a synchronous online or an asynchronous online course?
Yeah, I mean, synchronous is fine. I mean, making the chat active like we see it right now here, and ensuring, for example, that on the first day of the semester, everyone has to respond to something in the chat, then using that sort of deliberately in a way to kind of ensure that all students are participating in that, or opening up a discussion board on the first day and setting aside 10 minutes on that first day for students to actually do something in the discussion board. And so again, whatever synchronous activity in the synchronous course, what's the regular activity, the most regular thing they'll be doing, right? That's the thing you need to do that first day. And so if it's discussion boards, if it's using the chat, there's problem solving, watching videos with that are threaded with questions, whatever it is, just do it that first day, right? And asynchronous is a little bit more challenging. I do think, the idea that, and then also I have to say, I've not taught that many asynchronous courses, except mostly for ones that are faculty or for, so I probably am not as much of an authority as other people might be. Maybe people could throw ideas in the chat there. Maybe there are some in there. But, the principles are going to be the same. It's just, they're definitely going to look differently, maybe in an asynchronous environment. I don't want to sort of put my expertise in a place where I don't really feel like I have it.
Yeah, that's fair. I hope some experienced instructors can contribute in the chat to this chat. It's a deep challenge, I think. I've been involved in a lot of design of asynchronous courses, and you have to really invest in design to create community and engagement in that environment. And I think folding your principles into that design process is something that can be done, but it takes some creativity and dedication there. The next question is really, we touched on this a bit earlier, but the concerns are coming through about what might be categorized as sort of classroom management issues. Teachers who are in the position of confronting a hostile classroom on the first day. They don't want to be there, or there's a pattern of behavior within the cohort that emerges very early or is part of a history between those students that comes out in the first day. How do you recommend preparing for a particularly challenging teaching environment to try to win them over in that first week and set the right norms and expectations and behaviors?
I think you have to go back to the norms piece here, right? So typically then, if they're coming in with some kind of background, which is in the norm, what typically happens in those situations, those prior norms are coming in your room more strongly. And those, for some reason, those norms have been shaped in a negative way. And so you probably have to really think hard about what's the activity that will, you probably have to do a little analysis, some prior analysis, like what is going back behind that, just creating that sort of, which is creating those norms. And then your sort of respond to that is going to depend upon what those are, where they're coming from, essentially, right? So, for example, like I'm not sure about like hostile classes, but thinking about the idea, actually, someone just said something about chemistry having negative norms, right? So, like, again, so you kind of know that's coming from their prior science experiences, their science courses they may have had in the past, right? So I mean, you can be transparent about this. Listen, I know that you've had these experiences in the past. This course is going to be different. And I think, I've got my experience has been that students will typically accept what happens goes in a room if you just you're explicit about it, right? You've had these things in the past. It's not going to be like that in here. And so let's just, I'm going to show you some ways it will not be like that. And then we'll go forward, and try to reshape these norms together. I think acknowledging the problem, again, thinking about backwards, like what is creating those norms, and then you probably have to respond in a kind of ad hoc way, depending on what's going on. I do know that, for example, the one example I can speak to is students are coming from backgrounds in which speaking class was not the norm. And that could be sometimes international students who are coming from cultures in which speaking class was not a norm, or places in which the education was not very good, and they were able to just do whatever they wanted and just sit there and never have to actually participate. And those students sort of expect to come in your room and do the same thing. And but that norm can be addressed in a very explicit way, and by just continuing to push, and the relentlessness here is going to come in here, relentless engagement, right? And so that every class period there's going to be something, and so there's no class period where you can just sort of sit there and do nothing, stare at the PowerPoints and listen to the lecture, right? So I think that's probably what we have to do there, is have the kind of that 3-step process. Where is the norm coming from? How can you, and then always address it, to think, okay, so here's, even if you don't address the specific norm, just this is how things work in here. You've had other experiences, but here's how things work in here. And then, develop that idea of that will be the best response to that.
Well, James, it's been fantastic, as always, to have you with us today. We do have to wrap up. There are so many questions coming in.
Sorry about the outlet.
No, it's been a stimulating talk. And I think people will really value taking this away and thinking about it. And I want to encourage everyone to work in faculty learning communities on how you get this working in these difficult situations that are emerging in some of the questions here. If you haven't had a chance to read any of Jim's books, I encourage you to do so. They're really filled with wisdom and research-based advice. So I want to end by just giving you a little peek about what's ahead for the fall semester for us. If you're unfamiliar with the Higher Learning's webinar series, Jim has participated in this. It's really a fantastic, highly engaging series. And this fall, we have 2 great speakers to look forward to. Dr. Terrell Strayhorn is going to come talk about unlocking the power of belonging in your course. And on October 17th, we'll be hosting Sandra McGuire, and she'll be sharing insights and practices that you can use to boost student motivation and mastery in STEM courses. If you want to learn more about these and other events, download past event recordings. You can go to tophat.com/events and find those there. And last, I want to encourage everyone to consider filling out our faculty AI survey. This is a survey that we put together. We are hoping for some important insights that can help institutions help you in your navigation of what is sure to be another very dynamic world in higher ed with AI. And we're looking in particular at the relationship between evidence-based practice and AI capability. And hope you'll take 15 minutes to complete that survey. It'll take less than that, and we'll be making the results very public. If you do choose to participate and choose to include your email address, you'll have the opportunity to win $250 gift card, and you'll receive a copy of the report directly. So appreciate your consideration of that. And as for summer camp, we're going to be back in about 15 minutes we have two wonderful faculty members who will be sharing their strategies and tactics that they use to launch the learning journey. You'll see how they use Top Hat to support their efforts at the end of this, and at the end of the session, we'll provide a demonstration of some of their go-to features that they'll be touching on. So this is both inspiration and how-to for those of you who are interested. Again, thank you for tuning in, and Jim, thank you again for your contributions to our craft of teaching. Very much appreciated. Wishing you all
Thank
a
you.
great day and safe journey.
Have a great first day, whenever your first day is coming up.